Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and F7 Simulations have just released the ASK21 glider for Microsoft Flight Simulator. This is a very special one for me as it is the very first aircraft that I've ever flown, and I do have some 80 hours on the real ones, even though that is about 13 years ago by now. But it is my first aircraft, so it's always had a special place in my heart, and I'm really happy to say that we have gotten an awesome simulation of it for Microsoft Flight Simulator right now. So in this video I not only want to show you my first impressions of this wonderful simulation, but I also want to give you a little bit of an insight into how we flew the aircraft back in the club and my first impressions flying a real aircraft. So, I did say flying a real aircraft here because by that time that I started flying it, I have already been using flight simulators for a couple years' time, so I came from the flight sim world into the real world of gliding in school holidays actually, and kept doing that for several years until I switched over to flying powered aircraft. Nonetheless, this is it, the ASK21, and it is available through IndyBuilds at a price of about 14 British pounds plus tax. Converts to about 21 euros-ish if you live in the EU and have to pay your local sales tax. Now, might sound rather expensive, but believe me, the plane itself looks awesome, flies awesome, sounds awesome, and I just love it. Now, I might be a little bit spoiled here, but nonetheless, let me just add that I did not receive a free copy or anything, so I did purchase the aircraft just like you did, because I just wanted to have it in the very first moment over here. Alright, so that good stuff now out of the way, how about we go ahead and have a look at the aircraft itself. The ASK21 is a plastic aircraft with the capacity for 2 people on board, and it is used a lot by flight schools and flying clubs because of its excellent flight dynamics. So we do have the pilot seat at the very front, and then we have the flight instructor or passenger seat at the very back of the aircraft. The simulation we have allows you to open both canopies and has a lot of very good animations to it, and is simulated to a very high level of detail. So let's go ahead and start with a little bit of a walk around over here, and while we're about to do that, you might be wondering why the wings are being level over here. That's because on the other hand side, of course, there is someone holding the wing before we do our winch launch, and that is exactly what you used to do in the real world. So maybe the first kind of real world input over here, this is a photo. I'm sitting inside the aircraft, and this is before my very first solo flight, so really excellent here. You can see a friend of mine is just about plugging in the winch cable at the bottom down there, and from there on you just give it the thumbs up, and then off I went for my very first solo flight. So this pic is right before my first solo. I really do love it. I have a couple more coming later on in this video as well, if you're wondering. Now, from here onwards, what is there to say about the ASK21? So you've got the pitot probe right at the front over here, at the top, and then at the bottom, just in front of the wheels, we can see where the rope of the winch or of the tow plane is usually plugged in. Very easy mechanism, you just put it into here, and if you release it from the flight deck, that little hook goes up, releases the cable. Easy going. Alright, so we do have the nose wheel down here. Now, in my experience, it does collect dirt rather quickly if you are doing operations from grass field, but that's just something that just comes with it. Now, what also collects dirt rather quickly is the leading edges of the wings. So you can see that we have not flown the aircraft today yet, because there are no flies and stuff on it. During the course of a day of a typical club aircraft, flies will start to accumulate so quickly on these aircraft. Now, going on then, next up we have our speed brakes right at the top over here, and you might say that they look pretty simplistic. Well, that's because they are, but if you look at the back, you can actually see that they've simulated the mechanisms over here to a pretty high level of detail. Now, the speed brakes also involve the only bug in the aircraft that I've found so far. If the stick is moved to the side, then the speed brake on the right hand side over here starts to twitch a little bit. It shouldn't do that, but that's the only bug I found in the aircraft so far. So going out to the side then, you can see that little wingtip down here. That is where the airplane is gonna hit the ground, and over here you probably have the greatest death trap that you can find on this aircraft. That little hole over here does exist on the real plane, and if you accidentally put your fingers into here while the aircraft is being launched on a winch or by tow plane and your fingers get stuck in here, well, good luck. Can only hope the pilot notices. Alright, so rather large ailerons on this aircraft, and we are going to have a look at their effectiveness in flight, because you will notice that they aren't actually all that effective, at least not compared to other aerobatically certified aircraft. Something I do like is what you see right here on the wing. You've got that little tape on here, which is taped across the mount where the wing is put into the fuselage. So gliders are often stored in hangars, but likewise they are often disassembled and just stored in a disassembled way, where you just put the wings next to the fuselage. And that's also what that little opening is for at the top over here. So when you open that one up, then inside here you are going to have a bolt that keeps the wings attached to the aircraft. Moving along the back then, down here we've got part of our static air system, and this one up here is actually used in order to compensate the variometer, so that the climb and descent rates of the aircraft that are caused by pilot stick input are actually not being indicated on the variometers, but only the rates of climbs and descents that are caused by the thermals are. Apart from that, tailplane, really not a lot to say. Once again, over here there should be a little bit of there should be a little tape on here so that the airflow resistance is reduced. Now, what you can nicely see is the tape that you have on the back of the plane over here that causes some boundary layer separation and thereby increases effectiveness of the controlled surfaces. Okay, so that good stuff out of the way. The aircraft does have a tail wheel down here, as you can see, and last but not least, what we are also inspecting is down here on the rudder. We make sure that all the mechanisms are in and that the screws are tied correctly, so that's really important. Otherwise you really don't want your rudder to fly away in flight, do you? The same goes for the entire vertical stabilizer, by the way. So when the aircraft is disassembled, then up here you gotta insert some bolt, as far as I remember. Have to admit it's been a little while. And if that one's not attached, well, your entire vertical stabilizer can go flying. Okay, so that much for our walk around. Let's now go ahead and go inside the cockpit. There's different versions of the aircraft that are included with this package, and this one is just the standard glider one. I don't have the flight computer in here. We didn't have it in the real world, at least not in the way that we had in here. So this is a photo of my very first aircraft that I flew up here in the sky. Kilometers an hour, meters on the altimeters. But as you can see, we did have some board computer in there, but nothing really fancy. Now, you might say that, whoa, I'm flying really slow there, am I not? Just below the green arc, actually. I'm gonna show you in flight how the ASK21 behaves really well, even at speeds below the official minimum. Okay, so we're gonna have a look at that a little bit later though. So this is what the front cockpit looks like. You've got the instrument dial over here, lots of cables down here, and that's exactly as it is in the real aircraft. So it's a little mess below the instrument panel, but that's what it is like. Rudder pedals down here, and then on the left-hand side we've got the winch release. Down here we have our speed brakes, and the speed brakes are also attached to the wheel brakes. So when you pull those, the aircraft also starts to brake on the wheels. We've got the control stick in the middle with our push-to-talk button, and the green lever next to this is actually the elevator trim. So basically you would just move your stick wherever you want it, and then you just bring that green lever roundabout next to it, and then that becomes the new neutral position. And that's how you trim the 21. Apart from that, you've got a little air outlet over here, and of course your microphone. And last but not least, you've got the trim indicator on the side over here. Well, and that's about as easy as it gets. Now, that lever you see down here, the gray one, is to adjust the pedals to move them front or aft, depending on the length of your legs. Now that's what the front of the aircraft looks like. Let's also quickly go to the back. So this is the passenger seat. You do have some stowaway area down here in the wings, and in the aircraft that I flew, this was also where the battery was mounted. Now we don't seem to have that in this one, unfortunately, but, well, we can live with it. Okay, so fairly easy panel up here, but something that I really do like is the FLAM system we have up here. Now, FLAM is basically TCAS for general aviation and gliders, so pretty cool that they have that in the cockpit over here. Alright, apart from that, the back features pretty much the same as the front does, as this is where the flight instructor would sit on your typical instruction flight. Okay then, let's move back up to the front. We are going to close the hatch over here. Make sure that it is properly locked, like this, and here we go. So, normally we would fly the glider based on QFE, so we would dial the altimeter down to read field elevation, or sorry, to read 0 at field elevation, like this. Now, what else is there? We've got a master switch that powers the electric variometer, and of course the comms. Can turn that one on and off. We do have the circuit breakers, they are working as well, so you can pull that or you can pull that. Now, apart from that, you might wonder what this little ring is around the variometer over here, and that's the McCready ring. So, before the flight, you would read up your weather report, and they would tell you what the average rate of climb of the thermals on the day is going to be. Then you dial that one in. So, for example, I take that triangle over here, I put that over 2 meters a second, which equals 400 feet a minute, by the way. You put that over there, and then if you are flying and the weather is not optimal, if you're not going through the thermals, then it basically tells you on the scale over here which speed you should fly in order to get the best performance out of the plane. So let's say, for example, our best glide speed is the yellow bug over here at 90 kilometers an hour. And if you would fly and the air around you is descending at 1 meter per second, this tells you that you basically should fly at a speed of 125 kilometers an hour in order to get the best compromise out of the aircraft's performance. Now, the last switch that we need to explain is that one over here, and that controls the volume of the electric variometer. Now, when we are flying the aircraft, you will notice a lot of beeping, and that beeping basically indicates the rate of climb of the air around you, and can be used by the pilot to determine how well or how good the thermals are, but without the need to look inside. Otherwise, you would have to look inside the cockpit all the time. That way you can look outside all the time, because that is really how you fly a glider. You mostly look outside, occasionally check your speed. Well, and that's technically speaking all you need. Okay, so let's bring that speed brake in, and then we are going to prepare for our launch over here. Now, we are standing in Dienstlaken, Schwarze Heide, Echo Delta Lima Delta. That is where I did my glider flying in the real world. And we are going to do a winch launch over here. Now, in the real world, I would just have given the thumbs up signal to the gentleman holding the wing. In the sim, we need to move our rudder a little bit, and now he signals that we're about to go. Alright, so, let's get going. So, until about 50 meters you make it a shallow climb, and then we can really pull that nose up over here. Keep the speed well under control. Should be over 100. And as we're reaching the top of where the winch can take us, the stick will eventually go all the way back. And here we go. That's about all we're gonna get. Okay. So, up to 90 kilometers an hour. We've got to clear the immediate area around the airport here, so that we don't disturb any of the other traffic. You can see we have some very nice thermals over here, but we just can't go ahead and circle here just yet, because we really need to clear the immediate airport area. Otherwise, the people behind us are going to get rather mad. So, Let's fly towards those clouds. That is usually where the thermals are. And then we'll see what we will be able to do here. So, this air is descending at about 1 meter per second. That means 125 kilometers an hour. It's the recommended speed, so let's go ahead and fly that. Couple of basic numbers over here. You normally aim to reach the downwind position at 200 meters above the field. So we are going to keep our eye on the altimeter over here, and when we get close to 200, then we just have to return to the field to land back if we can't find any thermals. But I'm fairly positive with such huge clouds over here, we are going to find some, and we'll be able to fly for a little bit. So 125, and here we go. Okay, so speed down to 90. That's our best glide speed. And we'll just see if we can hook onto anything over here, or if that was just nothing. In the real world, you would be looking at the ground a lot to see the ground features. If you've got some big parking lots or stuff, that is usually where the Earth heats up, and therefore where you are going to get your thermals. But looks like we might have been a bit early over here. Let's get a bit closer to those clouds, see if we can find something. Here we go. But that's too small, we will not really be able to hook onto this. But let's get a bit closer to those clouds and see if we are going to get anything. In terms of flight dynamics of the aircraft, I find it to fly really excellent. It just flies exactly like the real ASK21. It's been a couple years, but I immediately remembered this, and it's just wonderful. It really is just wonderful. Okay, 280 meters. Let's make sure that we don't get too far away from the field here. Okay, entering the thermal, but only very light it seems. Let's just keep flying straight for a bit. That's looking better. Okay, well, sometimes if you can't find any really good thermals, you might just have to hook onto what you can find. So let's just keep it here for a bit. Come on, at least a little bit, please. So that's glider flying. You gotta try and find something. If you can't, then you just return after a couple minutes of flight time here. I don't want to go too far to the south, because that's where the traffic pattern is. But it really seems to look like this is where we can find the thermals. So let's just about keep over here for a little bit. I'm kinda intrigued to get a bit closer to those clouds, because I'm fairly sure that below those clouds is where you will find the thermals. The only problem is, if we do that, we are not really gonna get back to the field. Climbing at 0.5 meter, not really. Okay, let's see if we can circle a little bit over here. We are climbing a bit, though not very much, like 1 meter a second. But you can very nicely hear how the electronic variometer works over here. So, depending on the sound that you get, that beep sound we have right now indicates that we are slightly climbing. And the faster the beeps, the better the thermal is. Sometimes you just gotta deal with what you have, so 0.5 meter a second is really not a lot. We can get some 2-3 meters over here in this area usually. So, in the real world, what you do is, once you start to enter a thermal, you watch which side of the aircraft is lifted up. So, you never enter a thermal straight. You will always enter it with one wing first, and that side will go up. And that is the direction into which you are usually going to start turning over here. Now, in the simulator, this doesn't really seem to work. Looks like Microsoft Flight Simulator just can't depict that properly. But you get the general idea of how this stuff works. Okay, let's see if we can climb any better anywhere here. So, always keep a good look outside. In general terms, if someone found some thermals somewhere, all the other gliders are also going to come there. Okay, this is looking better. We start finding something here. And we are gaining altitude slowly. Oh, here we go. Wonderful. Okay, so we are climbing a little bit now. Let me dial that volume down a bit, because that sound can be rather annoying, but as mentioned, you really do fly the aircraft by the looks outside, and the occasional look at the speed indicator, and then you just follow that sound of the electronic variometer. Okay, it seems to me that the thermal is a little bit stronger over here, so let's just go wings level for a bit. And re-enter that turn. Okay, looking good. We are climbing after all. Not as fast, but we only need some 600 or 700 meters here in order to be able to demonstrate a couple of the nice features of this aircraft and what you would do with it. Okay, I don't like this. We definitely want to go back into the climb. So that was somewhere over here. So the clouds are over here. I have a feeling we should just get a little bit closer to them, and then we might also find some stronger thermals. This is alright. It's not too bad, but at least the altitude we've gained in the meantime gives us a little bit of options here to fly a bit closer and see if we can find something. But the rates of climb we had over here, those 1 to 2 meters a second, that is quite common for what you find in this area in Germany, and you are normally rather happy with that. Now obviously you can get some better weather conditions elsewhere, but fly to Namibia. Over there, 10 meters a second, easily. You really have wonderful weather there. Okay, so, I tend to say we had our altitude. Unless we find some really strong thermals here, let's not keep circling too much. I will just fly it slow for while we're inside the thermals here, just to take along any of that rate of climb we can get here. And thereafter, once we're closer to the field again, let's go ahead and have a look at some of the aerodynamics of the aircraft. So the ASK21, as I mentioned, is a trainer aircraft, and as such, it is very, very forgiving. You can't really stall it, you can't spin it, and I am going to show you what's going to happen if you try to stall it in a few moments here. Let's just get a little bit closer to the airfield again, and take along all the thermals while they last. If we can gain a little bit of altitude here, around about 500 meters right now, then we have a little bit of options to play with. The first thing you might have noticed is I'm basically always flying the aircraft on the yellow triangle. That's because the yellow triangle is your best glide speed. It equals roughly what you know from the Airbus as green dot speed or from the Boeing as the flaps up maneuvering speed. So that is what we are flying over here. It is rather slow at 90 kilometers an hour, but hey, it's something. The aircraft goes up to 280, but you will see in a couple of moments how the drag really increases. And that is basic aerodynamics. That applies to about any aircraft. But it just shows a lot nicer in the gliders. So we are leaving the thermals now, 500 meters altitude. That's pretty good for my taste. So let's go ahead and do a couple of things here. First things first, let's go ahead and do a little bit of stalls. So I showed you that picture earlier, that one over here, where I'm flying the real aircraft at a speed that is at the very low minimum there at 80 kilometers an hour. You can get it down to 70 and it will still fly, and I'm going to show you that right here, right now. So this is 80, as you can see, flies really well without any problems. Now let's get it down to 70. And it still flies really well without any problems. So that's just really what I like about the ASK21. If we go down to 60, it will start getting a little bit itchy. You will lose some effectiveness of your controls. But as you can see, even at 60, it does fly okay-ish. Now let's go ahead and go full elevator here and see how the aircraft is going to behave. As you can see, just takes the nose down. I'm keeping full elevator here. And as you can see, no problems whatsoever. We're just losing a lot of energy here. So releasing the stick, and here we are again. Now, you don't really need to look at the speed indicator of the airplane either. You will be able to tell about everything just by listening to the sound. So you can hear what, 90 or 100 kilometers an hour sound like. Let's go ahead and accelerate a bit. Let's go 150. And you wouldn't normally fly the airplane faster than that, because it will really start losing energy. So we're at 150 now. You can see how our variometer goes down to -2 meters a second here. So we are really losing energy quickly. The airplane is certified for aerobatics though, so let's just pick up some nice speed. Normally we wouldn't do this close to the ground, but just to show you, it does fly loops pretty nicely. Even though this definitely looks scary at low altitudes. The plane can take 6.5 Gs. You can see we've just pulled about 5. And that's about the aerobatics of this aircraft. Now, you might have noticed this little rope that you have here on the front of the windshield. Now, this, my friends, is a turn coordinator. And this is about the cheapest turn coordinator you will ever find in aviation. So you literally just take a rope, stick it to the canopy, and when this is in the middle, then you know that your aircraft is not skidding or slipping. Now, part of basic flight training for any pilot learning to fly the ASK21 is to learn how to get into turns while keeping the rope centered. So that basically practices your rudder and aileron coordination, as you can see over here. So that is how you should try to fly the airplane, with the rope always centered, because then it is not skidding or anything and basically has the best possible aerodynamics for you. So one more maneuver that glider pilots really use a lot, that is slipping the aircraft. Now, slipping basically means crossing the controls. Why do we do it? Because it increases our drag and therefore helps us descend quicker. Of course we can use the speed brake for that, and they are really effective. But let me just show you what a slip would look like. You initiate it with the aileron, and due to the adverse yaw effect, the nose is going to go into the other direction. So if I go left aileron, the nose goes right, and then I'm fixing that with the rudder. And I'm kind of bringing the aircraft into a slip condition like this, and you can see we are really descending quick here. To bring it out, neutral rudder, and here we are. Okay, so let's come back in for the landing. We're at about 180 meters, so a tiny bit lower than we are supposed to be. Gonna turn downwind over here. Here we go. Okay, so no slower than 90 on the approach. Better just to keep 100. And let's turn base. As we start the base turn, we are going to start using the speed brakes. And you will notice that they are really, really effective. Okay, and that is the bug I meant earlier. This is what the speed brake is supposed to look like. If I use some aileron, it seems to move. It really shouldn't. Okay, we are going to touch down on the grass field right next to the runway, and our optimal touchdown point is going to be just next to the standard threshold for the asphalt runway. So, coming in over here, we'll keep the speed at 100. If we do get low, we just put in those speed brakes. So the standard approach is flown with half speed brakes. Oh, thank you. Standard approach is flown at half speed brake, but as you can see, if I let go of the speed brakes, they're fully retracted now, the plane just floats and floats and floats. For that reason, half speed brake is your standard for the approach. That gives you options. You can either retract them to fly further, or extend them to fly a little bit less. So you can see those white markers here, those mark the gliding runway. Full speed brakes now, flare it, flare, 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 touchdown, full aft elevator, and here we are. Welcome back to Dienstlaken. And that's about it. That's the ASK21. That's how you fly it. And that is how I learned flying. 270 takeoffs and roughly 80 hours on type. That was my first 3 years in aviation. Just a wonderful airplane, and this really brings back memories. It flies really nicely, it lands really nicely. Really, all I can say is the flight dynamics are superb, the visuals are superb, and I'm really looking forward to do a little bit of cross-country flying with this one. Now, to finish this video off, there is one more picture that I have for you, and that's gonna be this one, and that's just before my first solo landing on the ASK21. That's literally on final approach for my first solo landing here, and I think that's a very good point to finish this video. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. The F7 simulations ASK21 is out from indie builds for about 20 euros, 21 euros-ish, including taxes and stuff like that indie builds doesn't mention on the product page. And, well, in my opinion, really recommendable, really enjoyable aircraft to explore. Thank you very much for watching. I sure hope that you have enjoyed this one. Let me know your feedback in the video description or in the comments below. And with all of that out of the way, I'm really looking forward to welcome you again to some more flying. Now, if you would be interested in doing a little live stream with some glider flying, do let me know in the comments. And it is something that we are definitely going to consider doing on this channel. For now though, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one. In the meantime, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. And if you really love what I'm doing, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you for watching and see you all again on the next one.